Hi, we're the Heart Collective based in Los Angeles, California, streaming through the universe, and I'm Taryn.
I'm Rhoda.
I'm Liz B. We are reframing definitions through heart-centered conversations.
Trinity Talks with the Heart Collective. First one of 2021, where we look at 2020 and share our reflections and discoveries and whatnot. 2020, the year that we hung loose. What happened?
Keep having this image of like people with toilet paper, like the toilet paper rolls. 2020 vision. I have no eye, but that comes to my mind.
We don't have a word for 2020, but we do have words and lots of reflection about what just happened, and maybe we could share some of that and get the conversation started.
I think this year probably hit a lot of people very differently. I think we all know people that were financially very impacted, emotional or mental, physical health. For some, it's been spiritually very enlightening or challenging, and for some, all of the above. So I think it's important to take stock of what we've each taken away from this experience, which has been a pretty intense one for each and every one of us, I can imagine, in at least one way or another, and then look at the collective and take lessons from that. And I think even on a very superficial, surface, high-level type view, we can see that, some estimates are saying that a quarter of small businesses are never going to reopen, least, and that profits for Amazon and those types of businesses, which also include Whole Foods, obviously, are skyrocketing, and that the earnings for billionaires have gone up considerably as well. I don't know the exact figures on that. I forgot offhand, but I do know that it's been like upwards of, I think, like 20%. So those are all very sad things that have come out of this. Obviously, some people have been very touched by or concerned by health things, but I think that if we scratch the surface of that, I think that there's a lot more going on. It is interesting perhaps to take away from, and it is my personal opinion that those lessons are going to be very beneficial going into 2021, because I know a lot of people, we're celebrating over New Year's, as they should, and saying that, we're in the clear and everything's going to be fine moving forward. But it is my personal opinion that we haven't even started yet. That was a warm-up, folks. That was a preview. Boosh. So, I don't know. That's my personal opinion, and I believe that taking stock of what just happened, which was pretty dang intense, is going to serve us very well for the upcoming year, which is going to come fast and furious.
Fast and furious.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
I just keep thinking about that movie because there's 20 of them now or something like that. And, 2020, the year, and I keep thinking about preview, like it's a movie trailer for what's to come. For me, the word that kept coming up, I was going to say sovereignty before, but now I think clarity. And I know it's kind of a cliche with 2020 being clear vision or whatever, but I think for the most part, people either, at least from my perspective, either got very clear really quickly about their own life and their own perspective and what they wanted in their life and what they didn't want in their life, and made those changes fast and furious. I mean, I moved 2 states over, which is why we're doing this over Zoom right now, pretty much in under a month. Fast and Furious. So I'm thinking clarity. On the other hand, I was joking about the whole toilet paper roll goggles thing, but I think people have also put on blinders due to fear, and that's been driving their vision. And again, this is my perspective, this is my judgment, right? And when we're talking about heart-centered talks, it's been very clear to me, very apparent to me, where I'm lacking in my own heart-centeredness, where I'm more judgmental than I thought I was, and also more able to, I can't find the right words, but for lack of a better phrase, cut people out of my life or cut things out of my life. So I'm very aware of that. That's clear for me right now.
It's interesting you said that, Rhoda. Yeah, I feel like many of us, and we've spoken about this off camera in previous episodes, but this year has definitely been a way, I think, where many of us have connected way more deeply than we could have imagined with things that maybe we wouldn't have imagined that we were drawn to before, or become closer to our communities and our people or our families, and then other things have just fallen away.
I just wanted to mention that the Fast and Furious movies, right? That shit never ends. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I hope that. I hope that.
Oh, you're right. Which one are they on, Liz?
I don't know, but I just know that every time I see one, I'm like, what? 6? How many movies have they done? Let's not just keep making sequels of that. I don't think we need that.
No one wants a 2020 sequel. Revisited, no way.
Listening to both of you speak, I'm reminded that more than before, 2020 showed me that we are all living in different realities to different extents, right? And it was really easy to allow for life to bring you closer to the people in the same wavelength, or call it frequency or whatever that was, I think, more than before, because it was almost like the static was set out for the ones who really got clear. And it was really easy to recognize in others that same clarity and that same frequency, where before there was so much static because there's so many distractions. And they didn't have as many, just in general, with our daily lives and the ability to come and go and travel or whatever that looked like for each individual person. And I feel like the fabrics of the tapestry of that frequency are getting stronger and tighter by the second. And it's really beautiful to see the tapestry taking place with, here we are doing this in 3 different parts, and I'm seeing the ripples of this in the whole world to an extent. I was just in a Zoom yesterday with people from all over the world, sharing their hearts, talking about their experiences, and really coming together as a community. People, most of them that I had never seen before. And I think that it's what our friend Polly said the other day. We're finding it's like the divine Avengers are coming together. You know, like we're literally like, oh yeah, you too? Oh, cool. 2020, for me personally, was a lot of extremes, a lot of high highs and low lows. And learning how to ride that, because I didn't feel like there was a lot of middle ground, and I had to redefine what neutrality was for me, because Rhoda mentioned the judgment, and just, I feel like maybe judgment is one word to describe something that is just not in resonance with oneself, that it almost seems like a shock, or it startles you to think, oh, but why? And then we feel in the gaps with the judgment. Yeah. So I'm trying to look at things from a, does this feel natural or does it feel unnatural? Instead of judging right or wrong or good or bad, like what does it feel like? And coming into congruence with that within my own self has been one of the biggest lessons for me in 2020, is that I am my own living person. I am a free living being. I have no man-made authority to obey or disobey. And really coming back to that center point and then making decisions from that, and that my neutrality would be divine right action from the heart space at every moment. And I'm trying to just continuously drop into that space.
Thank you for helping me be more clear about the judgment part, because I feel like I've been judgmental of myself. Like when I say cutting people out of my life, for a long time, having healed codependency and being a people pleaser and all that, I've judged myself as not being a good person or being nice or being a good friend. But really, it's just being out of resonance. Like you said, I don't judge those people per se that they're not good or they're wrong and therefore they don't deserve to be in my life. It's completely not that at all. It's just I'm judging myself having made choices, and it's kind of reverberating. But really, it's just acting out of my own accordance, my own internal compass telling me what feels right and what feels not right anymore. And not to say that those people that I no longer speak to, I won't speak to forever. It's just right now. There's an ebb and flow to the life that we all live. I think 2020 brought in a lot of gray, right? So there's a lot of coexisting realities, coexisting ideas, beliefs, and also finding, at least for me, I'm really trying to find the heart line between all that. Like, how are we going to move forward from a heart-centered place if we're not allowing for those other completely different viewpoints to coexist with our own?
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful and important and incredibly timely what you both brought up. Liz, you're speaking about resonance and really being able to identify strongly what you resonated with and what you have. And in Rhoda, you're speaking to just the feeling that it was necessary to let some things go. And I think 2020, you're quite right that 2020 brought up a lot of gray area in the sense, what you spoke to about many different experiences. Many people were isolated. Many people were business as usual. It's just there's everything. There's black and white and everything in between, right? But I think that it also brought up a lot of polarity, extreme viewpoints that were different. And for me, I guess the question is to go a little deeper into what you just mentioned, Rhoda, how I think that we all need to recognize and really see that there is a big polarity happening. There is very much like black and white. It can be defined as good or evil, black or white, and there is a lot of strife happening surrounding that. But how do we really sit strongly with accountability and integrity in what we know, as you said, in your gut, what is right? like saying, yes, that is what's right. And these are the people that I'm really strongly attracted to. And this is, the ideological viewpoint that I'm strongly attracted to, and still respect other people and their experience, even though it's getting further, the chasm is getting wider and wider, and it will continue to be that way through 2021. So I think that's a really interesting question that I've been asking myself.
What I'm finding too is that when we are in alignment and going with the flow, it happens so fast, right? Like I literally moved here within a month, and then even just creating what we've been doing here for 6 months or so, it happened so quickly. It was just like an idea, and then by the next couple weeks we were recording, and then a couple weeks later we were posting our first podcast, and here we are continuing, thankfully. So it's just really interesting how it's deeper. The connections are deeper when they're real, and also it happens so quickly. It's like when you vibe with someone you just met, and you're like already like, I love you. It's just there. It's either there or it's not. And I'm thinking that 2020 brought a lot of that. I think it's either there.
So true.
Yeah, it goes back to that sharper vision that you talked about, in the sense of not the physical eye necessarily, but just this inner knowing where you really trust yourself as your own compass, as your own structure. And from that place, you're able to really tap into the resonance and the frequency, beyond what the eyes can see or the mind can trick us into thinking. And then when that frequency connection is established, it's almost like it's a lifeline that's created. And then I think everything else just kind of is redundant after that. And on the same token, everything that had not established that lifeline connection, it was easy to just dissolve. Because it didn't have enough juice to hold on to, or enough energy to sustain itself. Yeah. That connection was thin and it was weak. And so it was easy to just sever that. And literally not to have to do much about it, but just really surrender and let it go.
You're so right. Yeah, and it's interesting to see, and I had the exact same experience, Liz, and I know we've spoken about this off camera, the three of us, and it's just been really pronounced this year in so many ways, with relationships and connections and interactions, and as Rhoda mentioned, with like sudden moves that many of us have had, or starting something new or ending something abruptly. But I've also been quite mindful of looking at, you spoke about the chords, Liz, and what they connect us to, and what is the frequency of those chords? Are they built on love and empowerment, or are they built and charged by a vibration of fear or negativity? And I personally have found that now more than ever, a focus really needs to be on being centered and very loving with ourselves and caring of ourselves and others, and making sure that what we're aligned to is at a higher frequency, and not aligning with those deeper, denser, darker energies. That hasn't felt like it's something that is even available. But I know for a lot of people, they may be experiencing this current. So just looking at where they're coming from, and is it coming from, as Rhoda mentioned, like an internal guidance, or is it coming from external stimuli? And just kind of looking at the source of that.
And I think that if before I had any question or doubt about the capacity of this whole planet being this organism, now more than ever, we're all cells of these organisms, yet we're all here experiencing very different realities. And it's clearer and clearer that we really do manifest our experiences. there are things that are out of our control in that way because there is a bigger picture that we are a part of. But for the most part, really stepping into that congruence with oneself, that if something is not serving from one perspective, how can a shift in perspective then allow you to see that as a serving, situation or relationship or whatever that is? And then once you become clear with that, then it's easy to really just feel into the resonance or lack of thereof and just move from there. It hasn't been clearer for me, at least before, in the integration of, as I said, like the three brains, like it's a whole system. It's not just through the mind where I'm trying to, logic with myself about something, but it's a really an inner knowing that it makes everything so much easier.
Beautifully said. And I think when you're fully integrated, your personality, your mind, body, spirit, your connection to universe or God or whatever it is, I think when you make decisions at that point, that the static that's going on externally gets turned down a lot. And those connections that you mentioned can be made. And that's, I think, when we can make decisions and actions that are not only for our highest good, but for the collective. Because these are really soul-driven, heart-driven actions. And I think that that's moving forward collectively what needs to be a focal point, because I think we've all seen this year what happens with strife and confusion and lies and hatred and anger and fear and sickness. It's been very complex, but it doesn't have to be.
I do want to say that all of this that we're talking about, and I can speak for myself, I have to just admit that has brought a thickness to reality and what we've experienced as a collective reality, and I'm not by any means taken away from that. And again, we're all learning to navigate the thickness of this existence at this moment in history in different ways. So when somebody says that, maybe this person, how I thrived in 2020 is not to take away from somebody saying it was the worst year of my life. I think again, as organisms of this big organism, we're all navigating and meeting each other to keep the balance of something, right? And so, and that's what I found in 2020 very evidently, that a lot of people were defending their experiences by telling other people that what they were going through was not real or was not valid. And I think that if we stay in our heart space enough, we understand that everything is valid and everything can coexist. And our experience is not, or somebody else's experience is not necessarily a threat to our own experiences, and how we can, this bigger space, having this micro experiences. And I think that has been a big challenge, and that's why we're seeing so much confusion. One of the reasons, not the only reason, but how can people make sense of disconnecting or incongruent frequencies that are incompetency at every level to make sense of your own, where there's so much going on around you, and to really hold your own experience as valid and worthy and real. As real as this reality gets, obviously. It's all
It's true, and I think it's an issue of accountability and integrity at some level. What you said, Liz, it's like my saying that 2020 decimated everything that I knew to be true or destroyed me or was elevating or nurturing. It's like that doesn't invalidate someone having an opposite experience, and it shouldn't, because you're right, everything can coexist as a microcosm within the macrocosm in many different ways. And as we said previously, so many people have different experiences, but it is an issue of accountability to own our own experience and be really clear about how we're going into the world with that and where it's coming from. And having it come from, I think, a pure, clear source, which for me personally, and as we discussed, it's become more dialed in and dialed up this year. I mean, it couldn't be more clear for me, what has and hasn't worked and who has and hasn't worked and who is and who isn't here. It's like, well, what is or is not going on. But yeah, I think that coming to terms with what is driving our experiences too is an interesting exercise right now.
2020, this or this?
Right? I know.
I don't know a lot of in between.
I don't think there is one anymore.
And for those of you listening without the video,
thank you.
Liz just covered her eyes or put little glasses on her face.
Binoculars. Some people took a deeper dive into certain things, and others just decided that somebody was going to tell them what was happening instead of them looking either consciously or unconsciously. Because what I'm also realizing about this year, and I've touched at this deeply at the end of this year, is the innocence. And this year has shown me that a lot of people choose to remain innocent. Some people would say ignorant, and some people would say asleep. But I'm also, I really touched maybe a month or so ago in this word of innocence and trust. And a lot of people are trusting entities, systems that have been here for a long time, yet they still have to prove how they've been serving us, and we've been giving them a lot of credit. And so some people decided to strip those systems down and, look at them nakedly. And some, again, consciously or unconsciously, for both ways, just decided to continue to trust and continue to be told. And I think that this year has allowed for that to become clearer and clearer.
So true.
We're about to post our episode on awakening. And when you were talking, Liz, I was just thinking about us awakening as a collective and how that journey is very similar. I have my own podcast specifically to talk about people's awakening journeys. And it's very, very similar in that the common point is that going through the awakening journey, people tend to realize that they've given their power to something external. So you might realize that your parents are not going to be the parents that you need. And this usually happens when you're older and you have to reparent yourself. And then you realize that there is no God in terms of how we've been taught what God is, and that you have to be your own God. You're the creator. You have to create your own story, and you have to create your own life the way that it is. So I see a very similar pattern in that at the moment, people are still wanting to give their power to somebody else, that someone will save them or something will save them and everything will be back to normal. It's a very innocent, childlike view. And speaking from my experience as having had a traumatic childhood, that you're really hoping that your parent or parents become what you need them to be. And you're just hoping, and it's that same hope that keeps getting put in our faces about we're gonna have a new normal if we're, daddy comes through, mommy comes through, it's gonna be okay. And it hurts me to my core because it hits my inner child, that remembrance that no one is going to save you. And it's a scary thing as a child growing up, knowing that no one is going to come save you. And I feel like it's the same scenario now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Rhoda. And it's like, I think that collective and personal trauma has put us into the situation that we're in. And I think the three of us as individuals in a collective are very invested, and probably many of you listening are very invested in self-actualization and evolution and personal growth and personal betterment. And the core foundation of that is accountability. And accountability, I think now more than ever, speaks to the fact, like what Rhoda says, as a child, someone should come and save us. But as an adult, we need to do our healing work and know that the only person who should be doing life for us is ourselves. And heal our codependency, heal whatever master-slave paradigm we have running or program we have running individually and collectively, because it's destroying our planet. If you look at it from, a perspective of current modern slavery in different industries or in different aspects of life, animal agriculture, master slave paradigms in governments and peoples that they are supposed to govern. I mean, the list can go on and on, but interpersonal relationships, class structures. So it's just, I think, individually working to heal our trauma and knowing that we don't have to ask for permission to be sovereign, and we don't have to ask for permission or yes, please, master, make me safe, or let it be okay that I'm safe and secure, master. I think that when we heal in us individually and collectively, what is really leading that, things are going to start looking really different, because if we take accountability for healing ourselves, then we project that out into the world, and it's a really beautiful thing, and it's a gift we not only give ourselves and those closest to us, but it's a gift that you give the world too. So it is not selfish to focus on healing yourself and making that a focal point right now, because it is pretty tumultuous out there, and that's really what is needed.
Bravo. You touched on the master-slave agreements, and I think that this past year has given us the opportunity to re-examine where we fall into the slave self, where we fall into this construct of this disempowered beings that need structures or masters or outside sources to hold on a certain idea of what reality is or can be. And I'm pretty clear personally at this moment of the fact that certain very prominent structures in the foundation of our societies are the terrorist organizations and are the ones keeping us disempowered through every level of interconnectedness that we've had. That being the work structure, the 9 to 5, the educational system, as you've mentioned, the government, institutions in the relation to the people. And I think that because of that clearer realization, we have the opportunity to then redefine those contracts individually, and if we choose so collectively, as more and more people realize what they've been conditioned to, but it doesn't have to be what they choose to or how they choose to live by. So somebody else's idea of reality, and then you start looking at it. I mean, the legal system, the legalities, and the contracts, and everything, and you start to deconstruct all of that, and at first it seems overwhelming because the foundation of what reality, quote, has been defined. And then you start to take those pieces away, and all of a sudden, what do you have? And at first can be scary, but then it's liberating because you're not in somebody else's box anymore. You're not in somebody else's idea of what you should be or how you should be. And I think that because we still have a world that highly depends on those systems, we can't fully detach from them completely as individuals. But the more and more we find ways to be self-reliant and less dependent on them, the more freedom you experience, the more freedom you can display and then be an example of. Because it's really, as we've talked about, it's a frequency. All of that is a frequency, and when you start experiencing that frequency, I don't know of anybody who prefers to go back and say, you know what, let me just pretend I didn't feel this or I didn't experience this, and let me just go back to how it was.
Beautiful.
It's hard to sometimes to see things for what they are, but being on the other side of bullshit, it's always liberating, I like to say.
It is, but what gets someone over that hump? Like there's, for example, there's things that we know, like our financial system. Most people don't understand how it works, and they don't know the basics, or even if they do, they feel disempowered to do anything about it, because what are you going to do, right? What would get someone over the hump, the other side, where there's freedom? Because there's one thing to know something is happening and then continue to choose. It's just like being in a bad relationship, right? Where you keep choosing to stay in it. And then what pushes someone over to just end it?
I think it's the strengthening of that core self and that core connection to something that's bigger than the experience that one can see, feel, touch, smell. And at least for me, and that's the only experience I can talk to, is that I'm not there 100% of the time, but the more I surrender to that, the more comfortable I feel in not having to control the other. And so I think that to me has been the liberation. It's not all of a sudden the other side. It's like there's none of that other side in your experience, but you're less attached to that. So it means less. Therefore, you're less invested on that. And you create space to invest in what really is meaningful and in resonance with your deepest connection to yourself. Therefore, that translates to connection with the beings who you share life with, that being animals, people, neighbors, to a deeper level, less of a deeper level. And that has an impact on everything, because when you are so deeply connected, you have no desire to hurt another. You have no desire to control another. You have no desire to manipulate. And all of that is freedom. All of that is liberation.
So true and beautifully said. And I think the only thing that I would add there, Rhoda, to address your really profound question would be that we all need to heal ourselves. Every being on this planet, by just virtue of being alive, has experienced trauma. And that goes for human and non-human animals. We all feel pain and emotions. And I think taking accountability for your own healing and really being honest with yourself and others about what's a program running and what is reality, like your own personal truth, what is a more objective reality too, even if it hurts to look at it. And if you have to admit that maybe your parents were wrong or they sucked or your community or your church was wrong, or the educational system that you were so invested in was wrong. Those things are okay. And that's one of the really beautiful things about life is that as long as you're alive, you have a chance to level up or to start over or to completely change. And I think until we heal ourselves, we can't get free from the constructs, the external constructs that are subjugating, because we're always going to be in a vibrational alignment with that. If we're operating from a place of not being healed, then we're going to, on a vibrational level, and the basics of physics and life on the planet is energy. If you're vibrating at a frequency and operating at a frequency where you're attracted to fear and negativity based upon the fact that you haven't healed, or you're not looking at the truth of your own actions or what you've been involved in or affected by, how are you supposed to make informed, clear decisions, or step outside of paradigms of control and subjugation? It's virtually impossible. So I think more than ever, the healing of trauma individually and collectively should be of the utmost importance.
So true. I'm also starting this with the analogy of being in a bad relationship, coming from experience badly. I remember the one thing that helped me get over to the other side, so to speak, would be a possibility, because sometimes you feel so disempowered that you can't see anything else and that you're stuck and that's the way it's going to be. But now what I'm really loving about this time too is there's people that are speaking about what is possible, different communities that are existing and that have been existing and thriving. And there's different ways to be other than what is mostly happening in the world. And there's different possibilities. And it's for us to find them and create them, and to find the people that we resonate with and the communities that we resonate with. And we uplift each other and we help each other to uphold that vision, to create that vision, and also to heal. Because it will take some time. It is a process. It is an ebb and flow, coming back to freedom, and then also feeling the magnitude of that, the weight of that.
And with freedom comes responsibility as well. I think that as I'm sitting here, I'm also contemplating the privilege that we have to have these conversations and to actually be devoted to something else other than survival. Mm-hmm. We live in a world where a lot of people, their focus is on day-to-day survival. And so with the privilege that we now live on, to a certain extent, and we all have different levels of privilege, we also have the responsibility to do the necessary work individually to then shift the collective for the ones who don't have that privilege at that moment. And that ebbs and flows and it changes. Mm-hmm. When Taryn talked about, we're looking for something outside of ourselves to kind of end, and Rhoda, you spoke about that too. And 2020 was filled with that, with promises of things that would then bring the end of suffering, the end of what the world was living through. And now we have the promised vaccine, and what's after that. So I think when people realize that the key to the end of all this has been inside all along, it's everybody retrieving their own keys and saying, oh, I can unlock the end of this within myself. And for some people, it will be the end of fear. For some people, it will be the end of dependent relationships, and or maybe a mix of all of that. Yeah, of this projected idea that something outside of themselves can help save them from whatever this is. I think that it's really a journey back into finding your own key and liberating yourself from the constructs and not thinking that there's something outside of you that's going to be able to do that. That being the government, the vaccine, the hospital, the neighbor, whatever. The thing is that's the next thing on display. Finally we are at the end of this. Mm-hmm. At the end of what, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
So if you're listening or watching this, at the end of this, we're going to have a treasure map so you can find your own key back. Not.
Right? Because it looks so different for each of us. I mean, yep. Everyone has had so many different experiences. And I love what you said, Liz, about, those of us who have the privilege to focus on our healing or think about things such as accountability. And I'm sitting in an apartment in Santa Monica. I'm not focused on, trying to pay down my $250,000 medical bills right now, or how am I going to put gas in my car because I'm living in it with my 3 kids and my dog so I can turn the heat on so we don't freeze at night. It's like those kind of people that, beings who are in a survival state, it is important for us those of us who have the ability to work on our healing to affect the collective consciousness. It's a privilege and a responsibility.
Yeah, well, when we have the capacity, we have had the privilege, having gone through our own healing, to be able to provide it for other people. And it's the same thing, is the more we take care of ourselves, the more capacity we have to take care of each other. So I'm thinking 2021 is going to really bring that into play. Just having more opportunities to help each other where we can. And I've already seen it. Like, personally speaking, it's been ebb and flow financially, and just like really low lows and really not really high highs. I wish. But it's been really incredible to be in different parts of communities where we've been able to help each other. Like, I've been in groups, like neighborhood groups, where you make meals for people, or you drive people, or you just give wherever you can. If someone says, I need this, like, for example, in the new neighborhood that I'm in now, someone said, it's really cold, we don't have that many blankets. And then tons of people just like, oh, you don't have a car, we'll bring it to you, and it's just such a beautiful thing that's happening. And I think more and more of that is going to happen. More ownership, more accountability, immediate accountability for the people around you and yourself.
I have to say also that in times of crisis, we've seen in this country, and I'll speak for this country in particular, but I know that this will resonate in different parts of the world. We see the best in people come out.
Mm-hmm.
We really see the humanity speak through people's actions and words and beyond political affiliations and ideologies and all of that. And I think that one of the blessings of a collapsing system is the opportunity for heart-based connections beyond all of that, what's really left of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the house is burning and we are the ones we've been waiting for. And it's every person taking that kind of responsibility and individual right action to then help mitigate the fires and also create the new, because the same fire that burns the old cooks the new.
Mm-hmm.
So at what level do we, put more wood in the fire? We just let that kind of simmer for a bit. And so it's really fine tuning individually so we can be of collective assistance.
Yeah, and I'm also finding that there's a honesty to it as well. Like I've seen videos that have, when we talk about things resonating, videos of people showing their virtuousness, their helpfulness, their giving. It makes me sick, honestly. I see people that make a game of giving money to someone who is an essential worker, and it makes me sick. And there's the truth will always find its way, right? So I'm really hoping to see more of honest giving, honest connection, and honest virtue, and not virtue stealing.
And that's the right way. I think that, as Liz said, the circus is going to burn, folks, and it's going to burn to the ground. And what I mean by that, you can read into that any way you want for those viewing or listening. But we have gone through something that is going to change the fabric of our individual and collective existences at some level. And I think an interesting question perhaps to close with and leave people with might be what kind of reality do we want to create? Because as Liz and Rhoda touched upon, extremes bring out the very best and the very worst in people. Extreme privilege and extreme deprivation bring out either community and giving or theft and robbery. It's like, water is going to sink and rise to its own level, and it really shows people's character. But what kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of people do we want to be? And I think the more we detach from bureaucratic systems, the more we can become self-reliant and community reliant and admit that no one is an island and that, our neighbors should be our friend, maybe not our best friend, but see if someone needs some food brought over, if they're an elderly person, as Rhoda said, see if someone needs some extra blankets through the winter. Take care of other beings. We all have equal importance here. And I think creating new systems where we have accountability to ourselves, a high level of accountability to ourselves and our communities and other beings is the right way to move forward. I think separation and strife and so much static and distraction going on that people don't see what's decent and good and important is not the way moving forward. And I think we have a really exciting opportunity to kind of recreate our lives. Much of that comes from the fact that some of us have had our lives destroyed. There's a beauty in being able to rebuild, and I think it's going to be interesting to embrace that and do things in the right way that is good for everyone.
Yeah, amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I encourage everyone to reflect upon what is the world that you would like to live on, and also what is your contribution to that world? Mm-hmm. How are you going to contribute to that? And how are you contributing to it at every moment? Because this is not a place we're going to. This is an experience that we can be having right now. And with every action that we take, every word that we choose to speak, every connection that we make, we are creating this reality. So that's the responsibility that we really want to hold close and dear to our hearts, knowing that we are, with everything we're doing, planting the seed of this sprouting organism that's going to be birthed, that's being birthed as the circus is burning, because there's no birth without death. There's no death without birth. And so take that, and maybe we can end up with a word for 2021, since we just reflected on 2020.
Surprise.
Oh.
Totally.
Plot twist.
Oh. I'll go with magic.
I love all of them.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be an interesting year, and I wish each and every one of you a lot of love and peace through this process. And it's all going to be okay in the end. It's going to be interesting in the process.
And if it's not, you hold Taryn accountable for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it's not the end.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's Fast and Furious number 386.
Yeah.
No. Wait. We're putting Fast and Furious on trial right now, and this is where it ends.
Okay.
All right?
Peace and love.
Done.
Peace and love 300.
Peace and love 300. That's where we start the
there you go.
The series.
That's the new show.
That's a new show. That was the last end of Fast and Furious, and this is it. And I wanted to add before we end too, when you're talking about honesty, I kept thinking, there's only so many lies you can put into a bag before the bag bursts.
Yeah.
So, it's like a balloon. How much can you inflate it and not expect it at some point to just pop? And I don't want to take too long, but it's just to tie in the call for honesty and accountability and integrity and all of that in the new series, Peace and Love, that we start right now. Yep. And we've started in 2020, but we're just calling for more to join the series.
Yeah. Yep. Everyone's invited for that show.
An interactive.
Yeah. Everyone is the star. There's no one is taking a major role, but we all do it together.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope you join us more in the coming episodes. Peace and Love, season 3. The Heart Collective. Thank you.
Thanks.
The Heart Collective is an initiative based in Los Angeles, California, and working globally to foster self-actualization and earth peace via self-peace through our nonprofit offerings and workshops. You can find us online at heartcollective.org, on Instagram at heart.collective, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts.